name is Liam Aiello. I am an instructional consultant with the Center for Teaching and Learning, and I have the sincere pleasure of serving as co-chair of this year's Teaching and Learning Conference. I also have the sincere pleasure of sharing the stage with three very unique and brave individuals who have volunteered to entrust us as a community with a conversation that they've been having since they took Pablo's class in the past year or so. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what this conversation will entail and then introduce them one by one so that you can know exactly what kind of conversation we're entering into. For this session, we'll do a bit of a welcome in our introductions, and then we'll have our discussion with myself, Rune, Natalie, and Pablo. We'll give you a chance to respond to some reflection questions after I've spoken with them about Pablo's teaching, and we'll do some table group discussions about what you heard. We'll close by having you as table groups compose a message to the students and instructor up on the stage that they can read and respond to, so that we feel as if the dialogue that we're having up on stage and the dialogue that you're having at your table groups has a cohesion to it. And this is what we hope you're able to think about or walk away with: an awareness of how students experience liberatory education, practical ideas for your own teaching and learning spaces, and an opportunity to make sense of power, voice, and classroom dynamics. So about this conversation. As we thought about this year's theme, I myself, as a former teacher and as a consultant, thought a little bit about the phrase, I feel so compelled about the ideas of courageous, liberatory teaching and pedagogy, but at times, I don't know where to begin. I knew that the things that grounded me were often conversations with folks who had been involved with liberatory teaching longer than I had, folks who'd been having a chance to interpret it and think about it in their classrooms in serious and ambitious ways. And that's why I thought about introducing our focal instructor, Pablo Gonzalez, here today. But then a second thought occurred to our committee. Our bids for liberatory teaching are only as good as they are received by our students. Dialogue is central to liberatory teaching, and so it felt like a rich opportunity for us to have a conversation between Pablo and two students who have taken his class that he nominated, Rune and Natalie. Again, this is a brave and vulnerable space for them to come and share about their teaching and to respond to it. And I do want to emphasize, it's a conversation that we're going to entrust you to take part in. I trust this group very, very much and value all of the insights they've shared with me over the past few weeks in getting to know them. So I want to introduce you to Dr. Pablo Gonzalez, who often Rune and Natalie refer to as Profe. Dr. Gonzalez is a continuing lecturer in Chicanx and Latinx Studies, as well as Ethnic Studies at UC Berkeley. He's also the director of the Ethnic Studies Changemaker Project. He teaches courses on Chicanx history, culture, ethnography, migration, and criminality, and he's the recipient of the Berkeley Distinguished Teaching Award, and also the recipient of the Chancellor's Public Service Award for Community Engaged Teaching. What brought me into Pablo's teaching was a conversation we had about a final project that he assigns, where in his Chicana history course, he asked students to produce children's books about overlooked figures in Chicano history. They write, author, publish these books, illustrate them themselves in his class, and then he finds local children's libraries to disseminate these texts to. Have a look out in the next time you're in a local library for one of these texts. As I asked him about who he'd like to nominate today, he brought up Rune Soto Ponce. She said, Rune is over to the left. Rune is a third-year Chicano studies major, interested in art and imagination, and Rune's goal is a PhD in Chicano studies. Here's what Pablo shared with me about why he nominated Rune. Rune first contacted me before the course started, interested in conducting research on children's books. Although the work wouldn't start till Rune enrolled in my Chicano history course, I knew that Rune showed an eagerness to get involved and a passion for children's early learning. During the fall semester, Rune would visit office hours regularly, and I saw firsthand Rune's eyes light up when we worked on the children's book workshops. Rune was one of my most active students in a class of 120 students and arrived to class with an energy that their classmates were drawn to. I encourage you, as you listen to Rune make sense of Pablo's teaching, listen to the way that Rune connects liberation and liberatory teaching with creative expression. That's something that Rune has taught us a lot about. To Rune's right is Natalie Adriana Salcido. Natalie is a third-year Chicanx Latinx Studies major and with an ed minor interested in education and its impact on policy. Pablo writes, like Rune, Natalie has quickly become one of the best students I had the pleasure of teaching and mentoring. The expectations were big with Natalie, especially because I served as her professor and supervisor. But Natalie has shown to engage and respond to my classroom in ways that I hadn't seen in other students. She's taken the breadth of my courses and achieved at high levels. Her interest in education and teaching shows how she approaches the materials, and she's an obvious choice given the work she's produced. As you listen to the way that Natalie makes sense of liberation and Pablo's teaching, listen for the way that Natalie connects liberation and family and community strength. Those seem like powerful sources of the way that she understands liberation. Please give a warm welcome to our panelists.
Hi, everyone. It's good to see you. I just want to, as I said, we're bringing folks into a conversation that we've been having for quite some time. And I'd like to take folks back to that moment when we hung out last week, when Rune and Natalie, you responded to this idea of like, hey, if you were meeting a new student, an incoming Berkeley student, what would you want them to know about Pablo's class?
So if I met an incoming student and I wanted to tell them about Profe's class, I would probably say something like, you need to take this class. This needs to be one of the first classes you take on campus. And the reason why is because I feel that it provides a very, very strong foundation for like the Berkeley experience, you know, whatever that is to like someone. And I'll leave it at there for a second. I'll come back to it, but do you want to go?
Of course. Natalie, what's on your mind?
I would also agree with Rune. It's definitely a course, especially as Chicano 50, Intro to Chicano History. I'm a very big advocate to many students who reach out to me and ask me questions about ethnic studies or Chicanx Latinx Studies. And they're like, what do you think? Should I take a class? Should I minor? Should I major? And I'm like, take one class, take a class with Pablo, or maybe even just stop by Pablo's office hours. His door is always open, and I always encourage students to go in there and talk to him. And I have always said that ethnic studies has had a very big retention with a lot of the students that I have met. Coming into Berkeley and experiencing Cal is not an easy feat. Like, it is very difficult. As many know, there's lots of hardship. It's very competitive. And sometimes you get very lost, especially coming from like first generation backgrounds, being away from home. I'm originally from SoCal, so home is pretty far from me. But I would say, like, when I took Pablo's class, I found a little piece of home away from home, and that's truly what kept me here. There was a lot that I was experiencing at that time when I first started, and just being able to be in community with others who were interested in the same topics that I was, who have similar experiences growing up, and also just being able to meet a mentor and a professor who was truly there for their students and never really made you feel like they were like you couldn't reach them or that they were somewhat better than you, was something that was really impactful for my future journey at Cal. And being here now, like going into my fourth year, my last year, I did consider transferring out of Cal like my sophomore year because I was having a very difficult time. And that's exactly when I started interacting with Dr. Gonzalez and truly just being under, like, he really took me under his wing. I started working at the podcast studio that he's the director of. And now I'm here. I couldn't imagine being anywhere else and having left Cal. So I truly always am a really big advocate for taking Dr. Gonzalez's classes, and just even like dipping your toes into ethnic studies courses here at Cal because we have a really amazing program.
Yeah, kind of to add on to that, I feel like it's really important to take one of like Pablo's classes or also just a class in the ethnic studies department because you'll find yourself in a department that really cares. I've taken a lot of classes on campus, but in my experiences in like ethnic studies classes, I always feel like there is so much care and effort and thoughtfulness and sincerity put into these classes, and it really creates like this feeling of almost like home in these classrooms. And it does ease a little bit of the homesickness to be in these classrooms, but there's also like a sense of care for like your future as a student as well, with mentorship. I think these classes not only pushed me to like, really achieve my potential, but also helped me find opportunities for like, scholarships, research, and, all sorts of stuff. Yeah, do you have anything else? Okay.
So hearing all this, Pablo, and what they might share with a new student and how much your course has mattered to Natalie and Rune, what comes up for you as an ethnic studies instructor, as just a teacher?
Whether kinder words than rate my professor, that's for sure. It is an emotional thing, just thinking about, and I know many in the crowd know this, the thousands that we come across and the sea of faces that I feel I can now think of, not only as faces, but with particular stories. And I think Rune mentions this, but also Natalie, that of course in ethnic studies, that is the rubric of and center of the discipline of ethnic studies, the project of ethnic studies, to really focus on the collective I, the construction or ability for us to be able at some point to be able to speak with a voice not only of our own personal experiences, but eventually have the permission of our communities to speak with theirs. And when you have students who are coming from all over and are coming to Berkeley for the first time, even if they're from West Berkeley, South Berkeley, or East Oakland, or all the way from Riverside, all these different places for them see Berkeley as something foreign to them or some place that they have yet to really feel like they can attach to. So to have the opportunity to hold a space for them to build that collective I think is a crucial part of what I'm hearing and that I at least think about, given so many students that have come through both my office and my classrooms. These two in particular are special for that. And I think partly because of everything that they've wanted so much to accomplish in the short time that I've known them.
What I'd like to bring up is, I hinted at it earlier, was the final assignments in Pablo's class. Rune and Natalie took two different classes with Pablo, so we're gonna see excerpts from both of their final assignments. And as I display them, I'd like them both to just tell the audience, tell me, what are you seeing? What are we seeing? So I'm gonna put them up on the screen right now. Rune, do you mind if I start with you? I know you can't really see it. I just realized that. What are we looking at?
So this is one of the first pages of my children's book that I did in Pablo's classes. And I will say this was one of the illustrations I was most excited to work on, because when I saw the syllabus for this class, I was like, I want to do this assignment. I am so excited to get to do a children's book for a class in Berkeley that I will be there for that. So when it got to like maybe halfway in the semester, we finally got to begin our project, and I knew exactly what I was gonna do. I had a memory archive of some art I was gonna reference, and this page specifically is inspired by a Chicana artist. Her name is Carmen Lomas Garza, and I learned about her art in another ethnic studies class, so I was able to bridge that knowledge to this class and really hit the ground running. And yeah, so that's a little bit about the art. Now actually about the book. This book is a Chicana perspective of the Zoot Suit riots, and this was a really difficult topic to handle because we were how are we going to cover a murder in children's literature and all these really heavy topics. So that was really interesting to navigate, and I feel like I did achieve that in the children's book. Another thing about this is I did not do this alone. I did this with 3 other classmates, and I will say that this was one of my favorite group project experiences in Berkeley. I had no idea group projects could be this fun. And we had a lot of meetings out of class too, successful group project meetings where we were hanging out and we'd be doing our work, but also just having fun too. So there was that I don't know, community aspect of it as well. And yeah, I don't know. It's just this project has such a special place in my heart because it is so much more than just the class, just the assignment, just the book. It is something that has taken me really far, outside of class now, because this semester I was actually able to participate in a BIPOC conference on comics and art and animation, and I was able to talk a lot about my work in this class, and it was a really great stepping stone to connect with people. And I'm networking with people. Even on my business card, I got one of my illustrations from this book. And yeah, I am so grateful for this assignment. I am so grateful that an assignment was able to really lift me in that way, lift me and my classmates. So yeah.
The way an assignment, I like the way that you really emphasize, assignment could lift me in that way. I've really valued what you shared about why an assignment like this mattered to you, Rune. So if you ever want to circle back to that, I'll put it out there as why you were surprised and a bit thrilled to hear that a creative assignment was something that you could do for a course at Berkeley. Okay, go for it.
I mean, there are other classes where, we have our 5-page paper, and it's all right, I'm doing this for the class, for the grade. That's a mindset. In this class, it was yes, there is the grade, but I also know this is going to be an opportunity to create, a portfolio piece. This is going to be an opportunity to connect with my classmates. This is just more than that A+ or whatever. Yeah.
I'm going to come back to that, and Pablo, I'm going to have a question for you about the idea of outcomes. It's going to be a bit of a preview of Gina Garcia's talk later on today about the outcomes of a class. I think Rune is surfacing for me in Rune's conversation about grades. So let's put a pin in that, because Natalie, I want you to now share a little bit about what we're about to see.
All right, so I had the privilege of taking Dr. Gonzalez's Mexican and Central American migrations course. I want to say a spring ago. I don't remember. It feels like such a long time ago. But for the final project in that class, Dr. Gonzalez publishes the Digna Rabia journal, a digital journal. in which the final projects of that course are all published within the journal. And so for the final projects, you can pick between doing like a research paper or also doing a biography, an oral history of someone in your life who has experienced any sort of migration, whether it's like across the border or like within the US. And so for this project, I was really struck with who to pick. As a first generation Chicana, a lot of the people in my life have experienced migration. So it was really just about whose story I wanted to uplift and really hone in on. And I thought about it for a little bit when I decided I was going to pick my maternal grandmother, Mama Rosa, who is truly the pillar and backbone of my family. She is an amazing woman. I look up to her immensely. And I really realized that the stories of like maternal figures in many of our lives, and I think also in the lives of a lot of like first gen and immigrant families, often go untold, even though they are the ones who are truly, again, as I mentioned, the backbone of a lot of families. And so I decided to interview her for her oral history, and I asked her questions about her migration story. And honestly, this had never been done before. My grandma is an amazing storyteller. She can truly get you like to listen to her tell her stories for hours and hours on end. But we had never covered a story about how she got to the US and what that entire experience was. And so a few years ago during Thanksgiving break, I went home and I interviewed her, asking her questions. I think our interview was about 2.5 hours long. And I just sat there holding space with her and asking her all of these questions about her migration story. One of the things that's most important about this project to me and why I hold it very near and dear to my heart is because my grandma actually has dementia. So she is starting to forget a lot of her life, especially like short-term stuff. She's starting to forget. And so I realized like that there is no better time than the present to truly hone in on her story. And I've told this story countless times before and sharing my experience with this, like, interviewing her, and I get very emotional because it is something that is really impactful to me, to, you know, be here trying to recount and hold her story and her memory as it is slipping away from her. There's a part in the oral history where my dad actually had come into the room to check on us and had asked, like, oh, how is everything going? And she's like, oh, we're good, like, todo está bien, everything's okay. And then he leaves, and then she asked me, like, ¿Quién era él? She's like, who was that? And I was like, oh, grandma, that's my dad. And she was like, your dad? Who's your dad? And I was like, your son, like Joel, your son, tu hijo. And she was like thinking about it for a little, and then she was like, oh, okay. And in that moment, like as we were conducting that oral history, a little piece of my heart broke, but I was like, this is why I'm doing something like this, right? For future generations, for my dad, who will be able to read an oral history that is published in a journal that is actually being held at the Ethnic Studies Library here on campus about the story of his mother. And so I am eternally grateful for Dr. Gonzalez's class and for that final project, because I never would have otherwise gotten the opportunity to do something like this, to tell my family's story, to truly connect back to my roots. And being in an ivory tower institution like Berkeley, sometimes that feels completely detached from what you're doing at Cal. Being able to relate to your roots, being able to bring your family and their history into your academics sometimes feels like it's something that is not even attainable. But being able to be in this class and given the opportunity to pick someone who is important in my life to bring their story to light, was, again, truly something that I will cherish forever, and I will be able to look back on this oral history and my grandmother and our picture, which is shown above, being pictured in the journal. And so, yeah, it was an amazing experience and one that I will treasure forever.
Sometimes I know you all wonder, like, why I choose these assignments. You're like, okay, what does Pablo have for us now? And I have to say that part of it is in deep conversation with some of my colleagues and peers, to meet the moment. That is that we have to, sometimes you all probably don't think we listen, and I think we're listening at various levels or layers of your, not only your experience of what's happening around us. And partly that means that to meet the moment is to meet you all on that horizontal plane that can help us start telling those stories. And that means for me several things, especially for these two projects, because it's not part of this kind of mad scientist view, but more so, I want your siblings, children that you either tutor or work with at elementary schools to have an opportunity to know what we didn't have a chance to know, to see ourselves in books, to be able to see images that they can gravitate to and not feel shame. So that's that sense of like wanting you all to bring that inner child as well to the classroom and say, this is what I want to do to leave for others. At the same time, we can't forget our elders who have a story to tell us that sometimes when we come here, we only see, especially in particular ways that might not necessarily, they view them as numbers or you don't get a sense that they are somehow a part of not only the history of this country, but just have a place in this world, have their own history. And so when you have children's books working with kids and then oral histories with your grandparents and parents, it's to lay the foundation for you all at some point to tell your stories. Because those are the two places that you, in your life cycle, will reach. And at this very moment, that's one of our biggest weapons to what we face. And it might seem sometimes, of course, tedious, but I want you all to think that there is intention with it. There's intention when you have to do the research. There's intention when you start already envisioning what the pages will look like. And then there's intention in even creating a journal that will be here at Berkeley and can be shared with others. There's even intention in doing augmented reality, which all of us know is kind of like, this is some crazy stuff to do. Because there's a layer of the story there too. And so when I see both of you in these two different ways, in these two different projects, I see myself as a child, not having these books that I could read, having to wait till college to learn who Lorena Encinas was during the Zoot Suit era, and having to wait till the passing of my grandmother to hear stories because of her dementia. And so that means that I can also heal so much of what I wasn't capable of doing, but to also meet the moment. Because at some point, you will know that you have the stories of your grandmother and the stories read by children for you to be able to tell your stories. And that's the one I want to hear. Yeah.
Again, I just want to pause to see if either of you have something that you want to say back to Pablo after what he just said. Did it surface anything for you? Or
I think for me, I don't know, being up here and, being in such like intimate conversation, I spend a lot of time in Dr. Gonzalez's office on the 5th floor of the social science building, doing a lot of work for the studio and stuff. And sometimes we don't have, these conversations like truly unpacking the work that we do. We talk about the intentionality, but usually not always to this effect. And I think I was just really like impacted by him sharing like the healing aspect of this work. And as someone who truly values like mental health and like social emotional learning, as someone who considers himself a very emotional person, I think these projects and these classes are truly something that embodies our ability to tie like our emotions and our healing, especially again within academia and the institution, along our journey. And again, that's why I emphasize that ethnic studies and like the Chicanx Latinx Studies program had a really big retention for me and other students. It's because we felt that we were in a space where we could do something like that we felt was missing in other areas of campus, but we found home in, and we were able to build that connection through ourselves, with our mentors, within each other's, our peers, and our classmates. And I think it's a really beautiful thing to touch upon, just the ability to feel and the ability to not be afraid to feel, especially in a moment like the one we're living in today, whether it's fear or hope or anger, we are allowed to feel, and we give each other space to feel that. And I think that's, again, the beauty of taking courses like Dr. Gonzalez's.
Conversations like this are really grounding. I feel like there's a sort of like, you kind of have to like prioritize, your professional goals and your academic goals here. And it's very easy, or, you're kind of like forced to set aside some of your other like personal goals and stuff like that. But I think in these classes really bring out those like I don't know, your personal goals, for like lack of a better word. I'll figure this out later. But yeah, I will say that in one of the first classes that I took in the ethnic studies department, I was so moved by one of the lectures that I decided to call my mom, who I hadn't spoken to in 5 years. And, I hadn't spoken to her or like her side of the family in forever because, I grew up with this narrative of like Mexicans are dangerous, and, my family they're considered pests in this country, and that kind of like sentiment really stuck with me for a while, and like actually, kind of scared me into like not reaching out to them. And I was like leaving this class, and my family didn't even know I was in college at this point. And I get out of class, I grab my phone, and I call her, and I'm like I guess, hi mom, it's been a while. And it was like these classes just really bring out those like personal aspirations or something like that. Like I really wanted to connect with my family, but in classes I'm busy with work. I didn't really have time to do that until like those moments. And then, throughout the semester, throughout the next year, it goes from like, we're on the phone together, and the next thing we're meeting each other for the first time in a while. And then, I had also like grown up with this narrative that my grandfather had died. I thought he was dead. And, next thing I know, I'm texting my mom and she's like, oh yeah, your grandpa wants to see you. And I'm like, what? I thought that guy was dead. And like, I visit home for the first time, and I got to see this man. I saw a man come back to life, and I saw him, my grandma, my uncles, my aunts, and I'm meeting new people. I also got to meet my great grandma for the first time, and again, like this is. Like I wouldn't, I do gotta give some credit to myself, but like there is like a lot of this incentive is like from these classes and from my classmates and from like my professors, and I was able to reunite my family, and now my siblings have moved down to Southern California, and my my youngest sister is in a really, really loving like home with her mom and like her grandpa, and like she's taking her high school classes now, and I'm able to bring like a little knowledge home from these classes, and yeah, and it's just like back to the the children's book, getting to see stories where Chicanas are like the heroes and like not the villains or whatever is just just so important to me, and it like really grounds me and like helped me figure out like what kind of direction I want to be going in my life or something like that. And yeah, I feel like these moments like this really remind me of like why I do like what I do, I guess. Yeah.
Wow. I'm just so moved being able to speak with the three of you. It's fascinating and just so authentic hearing how you make sense of the way that Pablo's teaching has meant to you, what it's done for you. I queued up the idea of what kind of outcomes we have for our courses. I know that's a big question that faculty or instructors might think, what are outcomes? And as I listened to Rune and Natalie talk about just the ways that these courses have brought them closer to their families, given them new discoveries about their families and their own identities. I have a total new appreciation. I'm rethinking what it means to have liberatory outcomes for a particular class. I'd like to give our audience a chance to now take in all the phenomenal things that you've shared. But I'd like to take one more moment to just think. We are about to embark on a day of learning with one another about liberatory teaching, student voice, and the places we teach. An ongoing question is, to what extent or how is Berkeley a site for liberation? And so I want to press any of you who are ready to speak to this point, what's a hope or a wish or a piece of advice that you would like to offer the audience before they speak in their table groups? And if you're moved to speak, that's great. If you're still thinking about it, that's fine.
I think one thing that I would like to leave you all with is that there truly is power in community. There is power in the relationships that you hold with your colleagues, your peers, your friends, your family, your chosen family. And I think especially in a time that we are all in right now, it can feel very isolating to experience all of these different things, whether it's frustration and fear and anger, anxiety, and you can easily feel extremely isolated. But again, there is power in the relationships that we hold with the people that are in our lives. As I have attested, this has been a very healing conversation for me, even though we have been, talking and in conversation for the past 6 weeks. those 6 weeks were healing, but this definitely was also another point of that. And I just want to emphasize that to you all, that reach out. Don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to ask for help. I know that's one of my biggest learning curves, especially coming to Berkeley, is not being able to reach out and ask for help and, prioritize myself. But it truly is one of the biggest things, I think, when trying to take care of others is, taking care of yourself. And I think within that exploration of liberatory learning, there's also a space to make for yourself and prioritizing who you are when you show up to your communities. So I just want to leave y'all with that.
There are so many people in the crowd that I admire in the way that they approach their craft as well. Many who I've known for a very long time and some that I've only admired from a distance. And so partly one of the things about how you experience today is an invitation to see how we can bridge the campus a little bit more. I admire you on the different sides of campus and the different missions that you all have, and how we can then, and I think the one thing is, it's one thing to admire, but the other one to bridge those admirations together to really think about the teaching and the teaching mission of the university at this moment. And I am extremely hopeful in that way, in that regard. Because I do get to encounter many of the students that take your classes, whether it be in the sciences, in the humanities, and the social sciences. And they come with so many amazing stories of the way that you all have also done the same, and giving them a reassurance that they have a story to tell, whether in their lab or in reading and understanding a text, or in their performative, in their performance. And that bridging needs to happen a lot more. And I think these conferences, of course, are a place of encounter for that. So in that sense, just to think about what it means for us to listen and then to also bridge with each other, I think that's one.
I'd like to give us all a moment to take in what was just shared and do some personal writing at your own seats. So please take out a piece of paper or just a device. And these are some reflection prompts for you to consider for the next 10 minutes to prepare you to then engage in conversations at your table groups about what Natalie, Rune, and Pablo shared with us this morning.